whakatakati hau ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai. E hai aki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, tai e moriora. And good morning. Firstly, before I start with apologies, can I just introduce you to Brooke, who has joined the governance team for WRC and is very happy to have sitting beside me, and led by Dave, of course. So welcome, Brooke, to the CEDM Joint Committee, and thank you for your work. Apologies, we have Councillor Russell Smith from Maramara Piako, Councillor Ngātaki from Waikato District Council, and I'd also like to acknowledge online we have Councillor Grant and Matthew Bramhall from NEMA. So welcome to those online as well. Disclosures of interest, I've seen one so far, and that would be, a mover and a seconder for apologies. Move, thank you, Councillor Brown, and a seconder, thank you, Deputy Mayor Annette, sorry. Moving on to disclosures of interest, I had one being Deputy Chair, Councillor Brown, pertaining to item 14. Don't need a mover and a seconder for that. Any other disclosures of interest? There being none, we can move on to the health and safety statement. This is for your information only, so I'll take it as read. I'm assuming everyone's read it, considering the game that we're in. Yes, certainly. Yes. So next, the confirmation of welcome, Susan. Thank you. Oh, no need to explain. If I can then move to the confirmation of the agenda for today, if I can have a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Lee and Councillor Buckthorpe. Those in favour? Against? Carried. We'll move on to next general items. 6.1 is the confirmation of the minutes from the 24th of June 2025. Thank you, Councillor Downard. Move, seconder. Sorry. 2024, sorry, I'm in a hurry. I'm really looking forward to next year, I'm sorry. I so have, excuse me. So for the 24th of June 2024, moved by Councillor Downer. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams. Are there any points of clarity or amendments to those? There being none, all those in favour? Against? Carried. And next, Susan, are you okay if we move on to 6.2, or would you like me to just table that for an agenda item?
6 point.
I beg your pardon, it is a part of agenda item 6. It's a bit confusing when you're reading off this and this because, so sorry to put you on your toes like that, but not required just quite now. Okay. We'll move on to item 7. And firstly, it's the group work program Q1 update. So I'll pass over to Julian.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the usual update intended to provide members with a high-level assurance reporting on the status of the endorsed work programme. And this is actually, just a reminder, this is the first reporting of the new work programme. And I will touch later on, there have been a couple of teething issues, but nothing you wouldn't expect with the new, the first round of reporting in a new system. One of the items I want to talk to today is to highlight the items that are off track. And there are 2 items that are flagged that help is required from yourselves. And both these work or strategic work items relate to working with iwi on the strategic work programme. So I've moved them to red, and that's through KEG, and that's deliberate. That's not a bad sign. That is, we use that in the group to say, I require a decision or I require some help, and you're the ones who can provide that. I'll outline why. So we've had some very good engagement with iwi in recent months, where one of those iwi has identified that their current preferred level of engagement with CEDM is at an operational delivery level through the joint management agreements and not through the existing CDEM structures, such as Joint Committee and KEG. This mode of delivery is realistic and it's achievable. However, whilst the word JMA is used, it should be noted that we need to just look at operational delivery rather than JMAs, because some councils and some we don't have JMA. But in the case of Waikato Tainui and Raukawa, who I've been talking to, they do have JMAs. So the approach of operational delivery through a JMA and through that local authority interface with the iwi does appear to meet the legislative requirements for the local authority. So, for example, Hamilton City Council engaging with Waikato Tainui. But the CDEM group as a collective, you do have overlapping legal responsibilities and duties. And I strongly believe that further work is required to look at the structures that are needed to enable you as a collective to also discharge your duties. So in a nutshell, the proposal by Waikato Tainui to use JMAs or a local delivery will meet the legal requirements of individual councils. What we need to understand is what is the role of the joint committee and what do the overarching structures look like, so you as a collective can discharge your own overlapping duty. Just bear with us. So for example, and this is I'll give you an example of that specific overlapping responsibility. If we'd agree that the operational priorities cut across response, so we talk about making sure you have a legislative responsibility, as do the individual members, you have a legislative responsibility to provide facilities, trained personnel, information and systems. That's as a collective and as an individual council. If at that operational delivery level, one of the councils involved in the JMA is not delivering on, for whatever reason, not delivering on appropriate facilities for civil defence centres, or the systems that they're using are not being delivered and integrated with iwi, and the response falls over, and I'm going to pick on another council rather than a particular one, then you as a joint committee have an overlapping responsibility to have ensured that that was in place. So what does the reporting look like through to you? And what is your intervention? That can't be, that off the top of my head, I don't think that can be delegated out. It lies with you in the CDEM Act. So what I'm proposing is that in the new year, whilst operational delivery by JMA or other local agreements with iwi is very appropriate and it's a really good way forward, how do we ensure that you as a collective are able to discharge your legislative functions if any of those local operational agreements are not delivering on what you expected them to, or what the group expects them to? So if you approve this, if you approve the approach of local delivery via JMAs or other similar, then it will require a review of an existing resolution from March 2023. In March 2023, it's in the document, I won't read it out, but we had a long discussion around what you were trying to achieve. You were trying to achieve greater involvement of iwi in a governance, an executive, and a planning throughout the regional system. The resolution that we, as an office, probably provided you was too narrow. It was to accommodate what's being proposed now. The approach that we advocated to you and you signed off on that occasion was very much top down. iwi come to the collective table, at a governance table, and everything flows from there. Obviously, this turns it on its head. It's bottom up. It's how the current resolution doesn't therefore support that course of conduct that is being proposed by iwi. So that's on the two red items. So today I'm seeking a revocation of the previous, you to consider a revocation of the previous resolution that you've given and allow the group office to explore the a more appropriate resolution that would capture a local delivery that is not too tight again. So it's not specific to JMAs. It would be enabled through any local agreement. So Hauraki, for example, may not have JMAs, but they'll have local co-governance arrangements somewhere along the lines. The same in TCDC for councillor grants. So it needs to be quite wide and enabling, and also to arrange a workshop for next joint committee meeting that we can sit down, and it's a workshop for you. I'm recommending it's not a workshop for partners and iwi at the moment. A workshop for you to understand with advisors and from KEG and the office, what are your legislative responsibilities and how that you can't discharge, and then we can look for a solution and a structure that involves partners once we know the bottom line. So I'll pause on the bit about iwi and the work plan and see, Chair, if you've got any.
Councillor Buckthorpe.
Thank you, through the chair, Julian. I had a little note, and it's just a question mark. Would there be a need to revoke the actual resolution, given that the resolution was actioned and all that's come out of it is probably a need to amend? And that was in paragraph 23. It's sort of worded to that effect.
So that's it might be appropriate to amend and retain some of it. That's a conversation and a discussion here with members. I can see some value in retaining some form of collective option on the table, because there will be some iwi, I would imagine, that say, no, I don't want to do it at an operational level. I want to come to the collective table. But at the moment, it is only, the current resolution is very narrow and only allows for the collective table. So I don't know. The short answer is I personally would say go back to the drawing board and have something that was all encompassing. If I look at the yeah, you could amend it. You could build on that, and that would just be one option. So I agree.
I guess, and that's what I was going.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Chair, my concern would be that it was, unless I'm not sure on who the Tainui Whaka Alliance encompasses, that actually that there's an element of, well, not exclusivity, but I don't think it's broad enough for those people, for those iwi who haven't yet had an opportunity to have a decision on how they would like to participate. And I'm speaking obviously from with a Maniapoto representative, although they're the major group in our district. We have got Tainui and Rakawa and others as well, but yeah, that I would be looking to see that. Because it says from the Tainui Waka Alliance. It doesn't allow and others.
Apologies, Chair. If I've used the word alliance, that's an error. It's Waikato Tainui. It's not the Tainui Waka Alliance. That's who we tried to engage with initially, and we've had two members of the Confederation or the Alliance come forward who are able to work at this point, or who are ready and have the resources, and that was Waikato Tainui and Raukawa. So when I say, so the intention, the original intent back over 12 months ago now was to try and bring everybody, all the main iwi, to the governance table using the Tainui Waka Alliance or Tainui Waka Confederation. That has not come to fruition. We've had a change of tact at an executive level. The advice I've been given is just work with the coalition of the willing at the moment. So who is ready rather than the entire alliance, who is ready, and that is Waikato Tainui and Raukawa. So, yeah.
So then what would our mechanism be for still making sure that the others are involved?
That's going to be engagement. So, and this is why we need to have a broad resolution that enables, going back to Councillor Buckthorpe's comment around the collective table might still be appropriate. What we know is there's two iwi who are saying they prefer to work at an operational level. We need to ensure that our resolution or I'm recommending that our resolution allows us to do that. I think there's real merit in the approach for Waikato Tainui and Raukawa, but it needs to be a much more enabling resolution that should Maniapoto or Ngāti Tūwharetoa turn around and say, no, we want the governance table or we want a totally different approach, then it's then the resolution allows us to explore that. I think the opportunity we've got here is to test this approach being proposed by Waikato Tainui and show how it works, if it works, and what some of the challenges may be. And some of the other iwi, such as Maniapoto, or those iwi who have certainly settled, can look at that and decide. It gives them something to look at and decide if that's for them or they want a different approach. I think that's the resolution is around. Got to be a local approach, or an approach that suits local iwi with the local authority.
So Councillor Brown and then Councillor Downer.
Yeah, I absolutely support what Councillor Williams or Deputy Mayor Williams said. We're in an area, for example, in Western Waikato, where we can have a large composite of iwi and tribes as we go from Waitomo all the way up to the other side of Karakiā. So we are dealing with it, and I believe that although the JMA has a great idea and it is something we can progress, I think we've got to really look at what we actually instituted during the COVID events. Okay, we had individual liaisons with a lot of iwi that otherwise would not have had community involvement. So I think it's something that has to develop, and we have to communicate, which puts our territorial authorities under a little bit of pressure, particularly Otahuanga and ourselves and Waitomo, to actually physically go out and deal with some of these smaller iwi and marae, and it's going to be quite a difficult and prolonged process. As I say, but I do think the COVID infrastructure, we found that we actually delivered food and infrastructure out under that, and perhaps we actually extend that a little bit. Maybe it would work.
Thank you, Councillor Downer.
I think a lot of this is covered in 3C. That'll virtually, I think, suffice on changing things. That'll mean to consult with a lot of the. I'm on 3 JMAs, and the process that I've seen that's go through it has been good. But one of the things that did come out of the JMA was there wasn't those ground people on the floor. Like during COVID, there wasn't enough of them. I think down Taupo with Kanapanapa was only Rachel. I think, is it Rachel or the person that's on the ground floor? So that was there wasn't that quite communication. But I think even through the JMAs and also the Maori representatives on each TAs, you're reaching pretty well much in. I know it's legislation, but you want to go further than that, and I think 3C will cover that.
I mean, just from myself, Councillor Pike.
Oh, thank you. I'm just reflecting on some of Councillor Brown's comments, and with the localised approach and approaching more iwi and more hapu, how are we resourced to address that need and carry out that communication?
And that's a perfect segue. That's a perfectly legitimate and very good question. And that brings the role of the Joint Committee in. So, for example, there is nothing, we would have to put this in, there will be extra work required. That would have to go into annual plan or LTP. And then what is the role of the Joint Committee if Hamilton City, for example, decides through its annual plan or LTP, doesn't put any more resource into this, and Hamilton City falls behind everybody? This is where that overlap in responsibility, what is the role of the joint committee in either providing some resource to that, and which might be politically challenging, where you're getting regional money being contested or considered for local delivery if other councils are doing that themselves. But certainly there is a role, that is the role of the joint committee, to look at that and maybe advocate within the councils. If you're agreeing as delegates of the mayors that this, we're going forward to the March workshop, that this is the resolution and we're going to work locally and it's going to require extra resource, then you are committing your council on behalf of your mayor to finding that resource.
So those sort of quantums could be worked out in the joint committee workshop, is that what?
I don't think we'll get down to those level of quantums, but I think it allows you, the joint committee can look at, and you can influence the joint committee conversation around how ambitious the timeframes. I think Councillor Brown talked about the time it might take, how ambitious the timeframes or how realistic you make the timeframes in any future work program. And that's how you probably manage that quantum. Yes.
Thank you.
So Julian, firstly, revoking the resolution, which was we did under the last government when the emergency management legislation was heading in a completely different direction or layered completely differently, is one thing for me. The second thing is JMAs aren't going to work everywhere. In Taupō, we have JMAs in regards to the Resource Management Act, but also under law with the Rivers Act 2010. And I'm not sure that JMAs is probably the approach. We have MOUs with different TAs in our emergency management space, so it may be something of that conversation. But I think in Taupō that we have one iwi, which I'm very grateful for right now, and that to actually go and have that conversation with them at a grassroots level is probably the more appropriate way to deal with this. So to actually start with a clean slate, considering that emergency management legislation is moving in quite a different direction, that this government don't have the same sort of layering through legislation that the former government did. I'm quite hopeful that going to a workshop and having an open conversation where us as joint committee members should go back to our TAs and find the appropriate way to engage with iwi to find out what the comfort level is and where they sit is probably the best way to go about it myself. But I'm happy for more conversation or any commentary from you on that.
I think that's perfect, Chair. In terms of JMA might work at the moment, just to give you some, we have had a very, very productive meeting with exec and some wider team of Waikato Tainui, and then the KEG members for Waikato District, Waipa, Hamilton City Council, and Waikato Regional Council. We had a meeting, a workshop to look at, is this achievable? So is this proposal achievable? And all of the participants, including the local and the iwi in that situation, said, yeah, this would work for us, for them. That would work for those councils. Obviously the detail around the quantum and the finances and how long the work program, that approach of JMA works for those. But I think you're echoing, or probably what I'm trying to say is we're in here as well, that you've heard a conversation today that there are some councils that are JMA, including your own, might not be the approach, but it's probably more around the local delivery. It's around, it is delivered by some form of mechanism at a local level. I think we're changing the approach from a strategic top down to an operational bottom up approach, but it's got to be relevant to local needs.
Yeah, thanks. One more question, Julian. Can you just refresh my memory in the discussions around the LTP and funding going forward? Was there not allowance for an additional staff member in the GMO? And I'm sorry, I'm getting operational here for a second. in regards to being able to work in this space with iwi and help coordinate an effort regionally in regards to this work?
We did, you authorised, you approved a role, and we went out to market and we sent out an offer. And unfortunately, I'll make a joke. I know I shouldn't, but I'll make a joke. Unfortunately, they met Irvin the day before they were going to work for him, and they withdrew their application last week. But no, they were due to start on Monday, and they withdrew their candidacy, so to speak, on the Friday. Joking aside.
Well,
So we're
that's not
now.
fair. Have you heard that before, Irvin? Okay, so is there any further discussion on this item? So firstly, staff recommendation 1, I don't think there's any issue with that. With number 2, I think the word alliance needs to be removed before anything because
Yes.
just an oversight.
No,
So
that was the original. That
was the original with
one.
alliance in it. Sorry. So
yeah.
the conversation you had just before about it being with Waka Tainui and
That's
not the alliance.
Yeah, that's the new proposal. Sorry, I'm confusing things, aren't I? So
No, just to clarify, just,
yeah,
so
just to
we're clear.
clarify, so the original proposal was the Tainui Waka Alliance chairs were invited to this committee,
Yeah.
or a committee of governors. That's factual. Where we are now is that there are the 2 iwi that are ready to engage us, which is Waikato Tainui and Raukawa. They are proposing a different approach to the governance.
Okay, and I note that Councillor Mahuta is not here to advise on this, but I would hope that through revoking if the committee was to favour revoking the resolution to work through staff recommendation 3, that there would be no relationship harm in the understanding of the wording of revoking a resolution in regards to iwi, just from a risk perspective.
Suppose if you thought that was a risk, I can understand why you would think that. But I have been engaging with Councillor Mahuta and Councillor Hodge.
Okay.
But I think it would be if you wanted to put a safety net to that, so there was no misunderstanding, you could go to Councillor Buckthorpe's approach, which is actually you're going to amend that resolution. Now the degree of amendment could be quite significant.
Yeah, I'm sort of not, unless Councillor Buckthorpe has a suggestion. Yes, you don't have an idea of what that suggestion might be. Would you like to choose a side of the fence? Because we can amend it, but it may take some work and it becomes about mechanism.
Yeah.
Whereas if we revoke clean slate and start again, it may be a simpler form without, but if there have been discussions going on with Councillors Mahuta and Hodge, then I'm sure that I'm just very mindful. I don't want to cause any hurt to the relationship and revoking a resolution about an invitation to iwi chairs and then it not happening. That's all.
Through yourself, Chair, it's probably, I've had discussions with, so the JMA approach is actually driven by Waikato Tainui and in particular, Councillor Mahuta has been involved in those conversations.
Okay.
What she has said in those conversations, which is very helpful to this part, I think, is at this moment in time, Waikato Tainui do not see the relationship at that collective governance level. They see that relationship at the JMA and the delivery. But nonetheless, over time and in the fullness of time in the future, there could be an option to sit at a collective table, but that's not where they are right now.
And yeah,
Councillor Buckthorpe.
just in response to that and your question, Madam Chair, you talked about risk and other speakers have talked about other iwi might like to go down that governance path further on. And that was the reason for my comments on an amendment, is that the original resolution was about a governance approach. And that was our intent at the time. And if we take that off the table, then that's gone. If we revoke that resolution, that's gone. if it stays in place and the resolution is amended, then it's an overarching, how do I put it? It gives the opportunity that this committee was in favour of both options, in other words, a governance level approach or a management initiative. So that was the intent.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Buckthorpe. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm just wondering if starting with a clean slate as opposed to amendment might be the way forward to show our intent of being inclusive of all iwi. But I'm happy to hear from the committee on that. Deputy Mayor Goddard.
I think we should go ahead with revoking that previous position. It's sort of covered in 3C that the point of it is out with that clean to come up with a better version. So I'm happy to move the.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Goddard. Do I have a seconder? Oh, you'd like to speak?
I second that and actually conclude with Councillor Goddard on that resolution. I think that unfortunately, if you start to adjust resolutions, you can have unwanted or unprecedented, events occur. I think if we start fresh and rebuild, we have the ability to rewrite it as we need it, and to the case that we're building.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'd just like to speak in support of my colleagues here that I think if we start tinkering with the mechanism, we could constrain ourselves further, and I don't think we need to come back to the table to discuss this, but to start again from scratch with a completely open mind with no overarching sort of predetermined resolution without going to talk to the different iwi is probably the most appropriate way to go. But Councillor Downer?
Madam Chair, you've covered yourself on that on 3C. So
Yeah.
that's virtually says that you're the path that you're taking. So, you're not just revoking it just for the sake of it.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder on that, and I'll take it as read. Recommendations 1 through 3. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you all for your input on that. It's an important part of our holistic journey going forward, and so I feel a lot more comfortable going back to Wharetoa with having them come to what they would like without speaking on their behalf, as opposed to the other way around. So next we move on to 7.2, which are the meeting dates for 2025. Kia ora, Vicky. If you'd like to turn your microphone on as well, thank you.
Sorted. Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read. There was just a couple of points that I was going to highlight in the options and analysis on page 28 of page 23. The dates proposed have been scheduled in alignment with group plan development and adoption, along with local government elections, and through Waikato Regional Council, obviously the support we get through their democracy services. There's 2 meeting dates proposed in June, which are to provide the opportunity, if the group receives submissions with a lot of submitters that want to come and speak in support of their submission, that on the 16th of June, you may not be able to get through those and do deliberations. So I have booked a backup meeting, which would then include normal joint committee deliberations and other reports. The group plan deliberations and other reports. And nothing in the schedule limits the joint committee from undertaking workshops, as Julian mentioned, with the potential with regard to the JMAs or other operational tools. And if for any reason, like a state of emergency, the 22nd of September meeting is unable to be undertaken, then that would be moved to either the 30th of September or the 7th of October. So we've given ourselves 2 backups prior to the local government election. So just tried to buy a little bit of time. And so none of these dates have been randomly selected. They've all been thought about, and yeah, just to give you a little bit of assurance on that. And I believe the calendar invites have actually been issued already.
Yes,
Thank you.
great. Vicky, could I just ask you for some of the newer members of the Joint Committee about, or perhaps Julian, around the Joint Committee and its obligations under the law legislation? We still continue in our roles as Joint Committee members until the different TAs appoint post the elections. Therefore, I remain the chair of the Joint Committee until there is a new chair of the Joint Committee, regardless of whether I stand again or not,
Or not.
get unelected.
When results are declared, that's when you lose at that time of those results declaring. So up to that point, technically, yes.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for that. Are there any questions for Vicky? There being none, if I would like to take this as read. I presume you've all had a look and received the calendar invites. So can I thank you, Councillor Downer. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Buckthorpe. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We move on to 7.3, the group strategic plan.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this report's to give the Joint Committee an update on the development of the draft Waikato Self-Defence Emergency Management Group Strategic Plan, and I'll take the report as read, but there's 3 things that I particularly want to highlight from the report. First is the timeline, which is on page 28, so that's had implications to the meeting today. Since the last Joint Committee meeting, an extension of 3 months to the adoption timeline means there's not content supplied at this meeting. So that's due to the engagement being expanded and now ongoing till the 31st of January 2025. The extended timeline aligns with the Joint Committee direction still to adopt within the term of this current committee, and the main reasons for the extended timeframe is to allow for far more comprehensive engagement prior to in the development of the plan prior to the formal consultation. So that's point 1. The second one is with regard to the visions, goals, values and pillars on page 26. So again, the Joint Committee gave direction to develop the plan in alignment with the National Disaster Resilience Strategy. The vision of a disaster resilient Waikato and the 3 goals as outlined in the report are both derived from the National Disaster Resilience Strategy. And as in all of government strategy, this link brings more depth when we're collaborating with government agencies. There's that strengthening across the region and that link to national. The values are informed from an existing operational value used in response and recovery across the civil defence in the Waikato, which is the Whakatauki he tangata. And the community feedback survey emphasise the importance of community at the heart of emergency management. So again, they're not just words out of anywhere, they're picked up, they're informed from parts of the program. And the 4 pillars that underpin the values, goals and visions are from the regional CD and Māori framework that was gifted to the group and adopted by KEG following the COVID response. It is an operational document, but those are the underpinning layers of it. And again, creating that link into your strategic structure. The third area is the separation of strategic planning from action. So I suppose this is one big change from where we're currently at. Part of the strategic framework proposed is to develop a separate 5-year group strategic plan and an annual group action plan. And engagement highlighted the opportunity this allows iwi to influence the strategic objectives and successes. The information was they've got existing documents, use their objectives to inform our group plan. There was no additional work they needed to be done, and develop the successes based on those. And this also provides the group with a more flexible structure to flex and adjust in the changing emergency management world and allow for actioning learnings from our own responses to be applied whilst retaining the strategic focus of the group. So we don't all end up just being about response following events. The proposed strategic framework outlined is from listening during engagement and informed from opportunities to link to and let others influence the plan. This is to ensure that the outcomes are comprehensive, fit for purpose framework for the group that provides regionally a common understanding of who does what at each level and a shared sense of direction and purpose for a disaster resilient Waikato. And all that's relative to the second recommendation in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky, and as always, very thorough. Are there any questions of Vicky? I'd just like to highlight that the Taupo district was the most engaged in the community feedback survey of all districts. So next time, come on, guys. In line, Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question around the work plan involved in all this. Like there's a strategic plan group. Is all of this work prior to getting the plan out for consultation in March, has that all been handled by the group, or are you wanting joint committee involvement in that period, January, February, leading up to seeing the draft?
In February, we'll have the KEG working party. So consultation remains open till the 31st of January. We're not just sitting doing nothing. At the moment, following each engagement, we are developing draft objectives and the successor. So it's not just going to be stop and wait. And it's quite a tight time frame, but it was changed to suit external. And in February will be the KEG group working party. So there'll be the executive oversight and any recommendations, and then that review, which was the group manager, the KEG chair, the joint committee Māori advisor, and the joint committee chair, them to pull together when they've got the information from the executive, if there's anything to reflect. And what I'm hoping is to be able to have that draft document out, obviously earlier than normal, to your agenda. So with a caveat that this is a draft and it would yet to go through KEG, but that is a hope, because I'm aware this is your document and ownership, and by pulling apart this engagement has created, a little bit of a gap there, but the strength that it brings from the input from linking into all the agencies and listening to iwi and attending hapu cluster meetings and all that, where they can see the real benefit of having influence into that annual action plan. They know what's coming down the road to them in the next year. So it has been of great value, but I do hear what you're saying. So at this stage, I would say the review team in February and take guidance from Julian.
Yeah, just before Julian speaks, I'd just like to back Deputy Mayor Williams. I think it would be helpful for the group, for the joint committee, considering it is supposedly our document to sign off, and particularly if it's out for public consultation and people may question. I'm also the chair of the Taupo District Emergency Management Committee, so it may come back at a TA operational level. So if there was perhaps something, understanding that it's a draft and it's out for consultation, but it's usual for governments to probably have a document that they can make themselves familiar with, knowing that it is going to that public consultation space. But to come to joint committee with already a draft that's been out for public consultation, it may inhibit us as joint committee members from being able to have better input before there's too much penmanship go into it. So is that a possibility, Julian?
Yeah, look, I think
in
there's
the name of inclusivity.
totally. I think, and I do look to Vicky for some of the detail here, but my understanding is that the joint committee get this document before it goes out of public consultation. So it doesn't go to public consultation before you've had the document. I see, however, that the timeframes around that are 1 day. There is an opportunity, if I link back to the previous conversation or the previous agenda item around doing a workshop for the legislative parts of how we engage, we could actually, as part of that workshop, if we did it at the right time, we could have a workshop that included the JMA issue, we'll call it that, because that's the easiest way for me to describe it, and the group plan.
And is that sort of appease?
So it would be outside of the meeting structure. It would be out. It would be an extra
Absolutely.
meeting.
It's just like if we're more involved in being on the journey, then we're more able and better informed to help do right by the Waikato. That's all. Keep us resilient.
If I may, so my I will look at the calendar and we'd be looking, I would say, late February, just to put a caveat in this meeting now, and we'll get back to you following the meeting.
I appreciate the
Thank
time pressures are really short as well, Vicky. So thank you, Councillor Downard.
Yeah, Madam Chair, yeah, because it's the 24th when we first meet. And this is, coming to us straight away then. So yeah, I think a workshop would be great in February, because it is important that we have captured all iwi, because that's come back in the JMA, is that a lot of maraes feel as though they are suitable for welfare centres, but the infrastructure is not set up for that. So I'd like to see, exactly what comes back out of that consultation, since it finishes at the 31st of January. And I do appreciate that shorter time. I would have liked that to go on until both with the partner agencies and iwi to go into the second week of February, because January is pretty much written off, with holidays and stuff like that. So it just seems to things get back into gear in the first week of February. But I appreciate there's a time restraint on that.
Thank you. And I know you have a lot on, but would be really appreciated if, we're your biggest champions. So it'd be great.
Can I just acknowledge, or through yourself, acknowledge Vicky and the work that she's put into this, please?
Absolutely.
And yeah, particularly, I think people that do detail will have a look at the six. It's not even closed yet, and she's got 600 or 632 bits of feedback. Although 631 of them might sound like they're from Topo, but 632 pieces of feedback. And just as a dip sample, I thought I'll go and it's not closed. I'll go and have a look. And the regional council did one for public transport, which I think is a very relevant topic across the region. People are interested in that. And that only attracted 209 bits of feedback. When you have a look at the freshwater policy from the regional council, again, something that cuts across most people, there are only 1,000, well, I say only, there were 1,000 bits of feedback to that. So to get 630 something submissions at this point in time is testament to Vicky's flexibility and the work that she's put into this.
Oh, absolutely. And which is why I said previously about how thorough you are, and the work that you do is very well appreciated. So please, we just want more of you. That's all, Vicky, not less. Did you have something to add, Councillor Downard? Okay. Are there any further comments or queries on this? There being none, agenda item 7.3, the group strategic plan, is that the report be received and that the joint committee endorse a proposed strategic framework for the group strategic plan 2025-2030. I think moved Councillor Lee, seconded Councillor Pike. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Next we'll move on to 7.4, group finances.
That will be me, Chair. So this is a standing item to provide an update on the financial performance. This time it's to the end of September 2024. So on the face of it, the detail speaks for itself at the 99% of total expenditure. But there are a couple of things I just wanted to bring to your attention, particularly in light of some of the conversations that we had at the latter end of last year, and if you want me flagging with you as a committee some potential challenge or some challenges with finances in the last quarter. So I would point out, you'll see that the direct costs are 108%, which is obviously 8% over. Just as a marker in the sand for you on that, we have had to spend, or it's an operational spend, but just to give you an indication, $50,000 or thereabouts for a generator for our alternate ECC. So for those of you who have been around a while on the committee, you will know we have an agreement with Field Days, the Field Day Society, and we have their facilities via a MOU in the event of a major emergency that we need to expand our footprint, or if our building becomes inoperable. Part of that MOU, we've always relied on Field Days. They've got a big generator there, and that was one of the attractions. They were very good and very open with us, and identified that their generator had packed in and they probably weren't going to be able to replace it, which undermined the strength of that location for us. So what we ended up doing was buying that generator. It was an unbudgeted cost, But when you look at the value of that MOU and that facility, it was a no-brainer to buy. Civil Defence bought its own generator, but we house it now at Mystery Creek. It belongs to us, but they manage it, and that just re-supports our alternate coordination centre. So that's the majority of that overspend. You'll also note that for the finance people amongst you, that if our labour costs are at 85% and our net allocated costs are at 99%, then we are spending more management costs at the moment. And at the end of last year, our budget was adversely affected by some accounting practices in relation to some CDM SLAs. So the SLAs that the regional council has with 4 of the council members around the table to deliver local emergency management, where the regional budget was being used to cover gaps in the funding. You'll recall that we got that money back. There was a lot of good work between the regional council and the GMO to identify what the issue was and the practices were, and we got that money recredited by the regional council, which was really good. What we've identified in this September year is those practices are still there. So again, we are working with the regional council to identify the issues, or we've already identified the issues and we've got a remedy. It's sorted. In terms of the practices, will no longer continue, but what we don't know at this moment in time is what the actual quantum, that 14% from 85 to whatever the budget was, that difference, we just need to work out a dollar sum. And it's just flagging to you early that we've identified it, it's positive, and we'll be able to have that conversation with the regional council and make sure that there's no impact on our budget by the end of the year. So we just don't have a quantum of what that looks like at the moment. But it's been resolved. It's been resolved with the good work being done between the regional council and the GMO.
So Julian, so when we come to the end of Q2, you're quite comfortable that we're not going to have this continued issue? I know that it's an operational issue and there's just there's some accounting mechanisms in place. And I mean, this is why you are the group manager and the controller to do this, but just for some assurance and support from us that you feel that when we get to the end of Q2, you're quite comfortable that the issue will be resolved?
Absolutely. So the issue has been, in terms of the practice, and the issue has been resolved, and it has been brought to the conversation at an ELT level at Waikato Regional Council. Waikato Regional Council have acknowledged that it needs to be addressed, and they have come up with a proposal to address that. What that means in short is that those costs, that gap in funding that we've identified that has been recovered from our budget between the SLA costs and what the regional council are recovering from those SLA councils, those costs are now going to be passed on to the full costs are going to be passed on to the SLA councils, and nothing we will return. I've got an email from the regional council that says you will remain whole, so the CDM group will remain. So yes, I'm comfortable that practice will stop. What we will have by the end of Q2 is an identification of what the financial impact has been to date. And there will also have to be some conversations around for example, this is very operational, but if the let's say the council that has been given the increased cost forecast decides that they're not going to accept that cost and they want to no longer renew the SLA with the regional council as a result of that, then there will have been costs. There will still be, those costs will have been incurred somewhere. That gap will have been incurred by the group, I suspect, this year. So we will have to have conversations with the regional council around how that is going to be addressed. That because very clear, the regional budget cannot subsidise local emergency management.
I understand, and I would hope that WRC can work through the SLAs and find some sort of way to ease But that's okay. That is very operational. Any further questions or comments on that? There being none, the recommendation is that the report group finances be received. Thank you, Councillor Brown, Councillor Pike. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We move on to the Y11 deployment surge staffing. Welcome, Aaron.
Morning, Madam Chair, joint committee members. So the Y11 deployment surge staffing course is a pilot course that's been delivered to assist in establishing an enthusiastic, highly trained team that would possess the mentoring and leadership qualities required to enhance the region's deployable surge capacity. The Y11 course is designed to increase the pool of deployable trained staff at the Waikato CDM group. On completion of the course, the cohort will have a high level of training and increased awareness of the requirements of response and recovery. It was identified that in a large-scale event involving multiple regions that the Waikato may not be prioritised for national resources or support in the form of the New Zealand EMAT team. It is likely that this level of support will be directed to more vulnerable regions. For this reason, similar-sized CDM groups such as Canterbury and Bay of Plenty have developed regional deployment teams to provide an enhanced level of regional support. We've been working closely with Emergency Management Bay of Plenty to ensure that the courses are closely aligned, which will work to reduce the reliance on nationally deployed staff. The course is a mixture, the 5-day course is a mixture of classroom-based learning and exercises, with many of the days being externally facilitated by professionals in relevant areas. The course is a significant investment in the participants and the region's response capability and capacity. At the conclusion of the course, a full debrief and evaluation will be conducted with staff, facilitators, observers and participants to determine the ongoing viability and where improvements can be made. Are there any questions on the course? If you may have the opportunity, if you're available to observe the course later this afternoon.
And thank you for that invitation, Aaron. Can I just ask, without getting into operations too much, about how many staff through the Waikato? I know there's 4 from Taupo.
So we've got 20 staff on the pilot course. That's all that the external facilitators could take. They've already conducted not a pre-screening, a pre-course psychometric testing, I believe, and so the external facilitators are going to teach them the communication styles, how they can communicate with others, how they can lead from the side and the likes, and assist in that in the response.
I just want to say I think it's fantastic. I think it's great to grow those regional relationships and to show that we are building our own resilience and capability beyond RANs or any other national offerings. I think it's fantastic. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you, Councillor Dana. Seconder, Deputy Mayor Williams. All those in favour? Against? Carries. Sorry, yes,
Madam Chair,
Julian.
is there an indication for Aaron? So it is only, I know it's only an invite, it's not a compulsory thing, but there is an opportunity for those that want to go and see later on the day 1 of the course. It would probably be useful for Aaron to know if anyone's going to be going over later this afternoon.
I'm really sorry. I'm an apology. Councillor Pike, you'll be able to go? Yeah. Fantastic. Sorry. Right, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to, and hopefully get an opportunity some further. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, just what is the actual time frame working with you?
So we're going to be looking sort of after the lunch meal here. We'll look to head out. One of the things will be get a brief from the controller and work the declaration process after. Oh, so probably 12:30, maybe 1 o'clock through. But it's fairly flexible.
It's on the way out of town, out near the airport, so it's, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, councillor Brown. So 3? Right. Great, thank you, Aaron. So we had a mover and a seconder for that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we move on to 7.6, which is the key summary, and so I'll hand over to Susan, key chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, an apology to the committee for my lateness. I will blame Wakakatahi, but I'll probably say I should have left earlier, which would be equally true. The summary of the KEG meeting is a fair summary. I just would like to highlight a couple of issues. There seems to be a high attrition rate at the moment at KEG with people retiring. So there's the appointment of Mr. Wayne Allen from the Waikato district as the deputy chair, pointing out that I'm not about to fall off my perch anytime soon, but it is always useful to have a deputy. And Kelvin Powell appointed to the Strike to the Strike committee. We had a conversation around the changes to KEG and M&G terms of reference, which might be helpful for me to just give you a flavour of those discussions. Certainly with M&G, the terms of reference, it was important that we formally change those terms of reference to meet on an as needed basis, given the relationship now between the chair, the group manager and controller, the need for ongoing regular meetings wasn't deemed as crucial as perhaps in the past. More importantly, when considering appointments to KEG, the terms of reference at the moment require appointments to KEG from that pool of employees who have access to the executive group. There was considerable discussion as to whether that should be maintained or not, because there have been in the past changes or departures from that requirement. But after discussion, KEG decided it was important that there was access to the executive of the local authorities. And should there be the need for a departure from that requirement, then that can be considered on an as needed basis. It does underline the importance and the cruciality of emergency and management and civil defence at a local authority level, not just at a group level. The Hikurangi subduction zone modelling, important that there be a unified or coherent communication plan, especially for those of us where some of the inputs and outcomes could be a bit disastrous if it all happened. And there was an endorsement of a resilience fund application, which is not something KEG normally does, but in this circumstance, all the boxes were ticked, and it seemed a useful thing to endorse the Opawa Rangitoto 2C Incorporation application to that fund. The rest of it was around feedback. There was a not dissimilar discussion on the draft group strategic plan, noting that the timelines are tight and we are interrupted in the preparation of that plan by a little thing called local authority elections, which need to be accommodated. And I just want to endorse Vicky's done a great job in actually outlining that timetable, as well as pulling out the framework for that plan from national requirements. Other than that, members, I don't think I need to go into any more detail unless there are questions for me.
Councillor Pike.
Sorry, I just it was remiss of me to not note a potential conflict for the appointment of Calvin Powell, but I don't feel conflicted in the matter.
That was done at an executive level, so you're fine. But thank you for noting that, Councillor Brown.
Just the coronial inquest update, that's from the Auckland anniversary, isn't it? Is there any further updates that we need to know as joint committee?
Just if I can just, if we could perhaps wait
What
for
will mark that?
publicly excluded, just in case that it is around people or findings that haven't been reported yet, if that's all okay with the committee. Thank you. Any other questions of Susan? Yes, Julian.
Chair, I'm just very conscious, the Hikarangi subduction zone and the communications plan. I'm very conscious that we actually haven't given you, in a public meeting, we have not given you the modelling to show what those impacts are. So we do intend, I've got a note here that we intend to give you an update before. So there is no, we're going to give you an update on the modelling and show you which councils and which areas are likely to have a very bad day, which ones are likely to just have a bad day with a Hikarangi subduction zone. Of interest, it was all over the Herald over the weekend, the Hikarangi subduction zone. So we've invested in modelling with GNS. We've got that modelling down to district level, and it's fair to say that some councils are in for a bigger shake than others. So what we're preparing at this moment in time is this comms plan. It's not a proactive comms plan. We're not going out there saying this is what we've got. It is a comms plan that allows us to use that modelling in a public space if we need to, engage with partners, and then if we get any questions arising from that, then we've got a comms plan that we're not standing on each other's toes. So we will give you a briefing on the Hikarangi subduction zone and what that modelling looks like at the next earliest opportunity, which will probably be the next meeting.
Yeah, thanks for that, Julian. You know, there's been a lot of work done over the years, last probably 5 years on this. I remember there being probably a recommendation from MB that we should probably be building to IL6. So yeah, that'll be great to see that that detailed work that's starting to come through in the new year. Councillor Pike, did you have a
I just wondered whether it's appropriate or usual that we do a motion of thanks to the resignation of Mr. Cavers and Mr. Towler for their service and care.
thank you. At the last joint committee, we did thank Mr. Cavers with a presentation. Mr. Calvin Powell, if you'd like a letter from the joint committee sent to him to thank him for his work, I'm quite happy.
Mr. Towler.
Towler, sorry. Did we do something for Gary before he left?
He was retiring before this meeting, so he's gone. So we did, you signed a certificate and on behalf of the Civil Defence Group, thanking him for his long and committed service.
Yes, I did recognise that. I just thought you meant Calvin Powell from your own council, but is that okay, Councillor Pike? You're quite happy that those recognitions have been done?
Was done to them.
Yes, and thank you for that reminder.
And he also received a 10-year long service award from Minister of Emergency Management with a nice letter.
Right. Thank you. Are there any further questions or queries for Susan? Chair? There being none, the recommendation is that the report be received. Could I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Lee, and I'll second that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We next move on to 7.7, which is our NEMA update, and we have Matthew online. Are you able to speak to your report, Matthew?
Sure, thank you, and apologies for not being present. I'm just in Wellington in some meetings. Just a couple of items. I'll take the report as being read. In relation to our first point, the government's response to the recommendations in the Niswing inquiry has recently been released. That was released on the 10th of October. it's a long-term vision to strengthen New Zealand's emergency management system. Some key points I just wanted to go over with you is that early next year, the government will make some further decisions on how it will affect its long-term vision. We're currently doing some ongoing work within NEMA at the moment in time. There's quite a lot of detail still to come out of those discussions, but we are making some good progress. So hopefully we'll have more information for Joint Committee early next year. The second item is the review of reviews. So NEMA has published our review of reviews from the 2023 North Island Severe Weather Events Report. That is now available on our website. I would encourage you, if you do have that opportunity, to have a look at that. NEMA has undertaken this work to identify common themes from the various reviews into the events. The main findings that is essentially no surprise. The reports were analysed. Finding reflects those of the report of the government inquiry into the response in Niswi, but also some of the key areas that we've seen in previous reports, such as the TAG review. There's 6 main themes identified: communities, command control, coordination, operations, and resources. So NEMA will work with stakeholders to develop a lessons management guidance and a set of national themes in the future as well. And that's all it is from myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Can I just ask you in regards to Starlink?
Yes.
I see here that the work that's been undergone and finalising the agreement at a national level, and then it'll be rolled out regionally. Beyond regionally, will it be then up to the different groups to roll it out further to TAs? The reason I ask is just in regards to funding, because I know in Taupō we move into our new home next year, and we are underway with an agreement with Starlink ourselves for the new EOC. So I'm just wondering if perhaps the funding for that can come from somewhere else apart from ratepayers' pockets, I suppose I'm asking you.
My understanding is that it will be worked within the group, but what I will do is I'll make some further clarification and come back to the Joint Committee on that, just to confirm for you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any other questions?
I can add some
Julian.
clarification
Yes.
to that if you want, Madam Chair. So there is, I don't know the hierarchy of or the schedule of which groups are which, but there will be one, because NEMA can't work with every group at the same time. But it is my understanding, or it's my clear understanding, that even when it comes down to a group and a local level, the costs will still lie at a group and a local level. It will just be significantly more competitive costs, because NEMA will become the provider on behalf of Starlink. So there are some contractual things where if you as an individual, any organization goes and buys the product from someone else, it's to do with you're buying a bulk amount, irrespective of how much you use, is my understanding of this. Whereas with NEMA, you don't have to buy the bulk. So it will be a reduced cost, but it will be a local cost.
Thank you for that. I'll take any small one. Councillor Lee?
Yeah, through the chair. Good morning, Matthew. Could you just give us a little bit more information about the National Fuel Plan? I'm just wondering if we have capacity and whether we need to increase that capacity, please.
Yeah, so the National Fuel Plan, it's just recently been published on the NEMA website. There's some obviously major updates, which include that introduction of minimum stock holding. In regards to your specific question, I think that's something that I'm going to have to discuss with my colleagues, and again come back to the Joint Committee with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. That would be good, because I just think, considering what's happening and heading towards Europe, particularly that those international risk factors hopefully have been taken into account. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I was also about the fuel, and the one thing that worried me was whether our group or regional controllers would have access to that in a massive national emergency, because we can have fuel located at, let's say, Marsden Point, but to get it down to here or even get down through the country could be quite difficult or unable to be used. So I feel from a national emergency side, we need to have these fuel stocks in a location that is available to perhaps our regional controllers. And it's something just to bring up to, I think, at national level, that they should approach the government and say that we should retain those fuel stocks, not in one location in the country, but in numerous regional locations. And I agree with what Councillor Lee was saying.
And also to add to that, that would to have more accessibility throughout the country would then show better resilience. But I haven't read the fuel plan yet, so but good commentary. Thank you. Any other questions for Matthew? Okay, there being none. Matthew, firstly, before the recommendation, can I just thank you for your consistent contact and information provided to us as the joint committee, and I'm sure I can't speak for Julian and his team, but we've really appreciated your support this year from a joint committee perspective. So then can I ask for a mover and a seconder that the National Emergency Management Update be received? Councillor Lee, Councillor Brown, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
If I could kindly ask for a mover and a seconder for a resolution to exclude the public. Deputy Mayor Williams, Councillor Buckthorpe, thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we'll move on to item 8.1, the statutory appointment of, sorry, we'll just wait for camera.
Madam Chair, do I need to leave the room? Or?
No, I think that's fine. Unless anyone else, are all committee members happy for Councillor Brown to remain in the room?